by the time I graduated, I was ready to go off to college to, go back to Madison, big city, huge campus, nightlife, all that sort of stuff. And I got into like bouncing, being a doorman. I was up till like 3 a.m. every night. Uh, it was like a complete 180 from high school where like I almost felt invisible in high school. But then I got to college and you're like the doorman at the most popular bar in Madison. So everyone respects you. All the football players want to be your friend. Like you become this huge icon. Everyone's looking up to you. Everybody, it was wild. So that was addicting as well. And then that's kind of like how I got into anabolic steroids, where I started taking them at age 20, and everything just blew up from there. The attention, the competitions, the numbers, all that. It's like a blur to look back on because it all came on so quickly.
Damn, dude. I think the confidence that comes with exercising, whether it's lifting or running, like it's so huge. Like I feel like I've heard that a similar story from a lot of people where like they weren't like bullied necessarily, or they just weren't like the popular kid because they were scrawny, they didn't really do a whole lot, and then they got into lifting and they started running really fast or doing some sort of athletic achievements, and like then all of a sudden they have this confidence because people are like respecting them more. And I think like if more of that was encouraged with like kids and younger kids in middle school, high school, I think we could get rid of a lot of the like mental health problems and a lot of the like more negative things that happen at that age, just by people getting out and exercising and building that confidence. That's a great story though. I think the bouncing position is probably perfect for a guy like you. I mean, you're just a massive power lifter, dude. Like that's a perfect job for you in college.
Well, at the time, I was completely introverted. I never partied, nothing like that. I didn't really have friends. So going from that to a position where you have to interact with hundreds of people every night, that kind of brought out the social skills, so to speak. Like I had to learn real fast on the fly how to talk to people all night long, being around hundreds of people. You're making all these friends. Everybody's trying to be your friend, so they have like special privileges and stuff like that. So that got me out of my shell to where, even nowadays, I'm very confident with like public speaking, giving presentations, things like that, seminars, whatever. And a lot of that is because for those like 3 years, I was just interacting with people all night long. And so that took me from like this introvert to where I'd still probably say I was an introvert, but I was able to be more extroverted and kind of break out of that shell. And the confidence came from that. And then the lifting helped as well. You see your body transform. You see yourself put on all this muscle mass. You see your strength rise up, all these crazy numbers. And it definitely helped. And I took it to the next level in an unhealthy manner to where, age 20, getting on anabolic steroids, probably not the wisest decision, but that also helped with confidence to a degree. It also added to the intimidation factor of like being a doorman and that sort of thing, the whole look. So
Mm.
I got up to about 260 pounds at one point and
Holy shit.
hitting some crazy numbers. Like the squat got up to 772 pounds in knee sleeves. Bench was 485, and then deadlift 920 pounds. And this is just it was the whole deal. It was addicting. So steroids like were mentally addicting in that sense, where the power you feel from them, the confidence, that sort of thing. Uh, that also took things to the next level beyond just lifting itself. And I'm happy to say, obviously, we'll get into this, but I got away from all that.
Dude, those numbers are impressive. You said 772 squat, 485-pound bench, 920-pound deadlift. Those are some insane numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and you can say like obviously a large part of that was steroids. There was, I did get to a 700-pound deadlift naturally, but bench was like 315 pounds prior to that, and squat was upper fives. It was like 580 high bar with no belt, no knee sleeves, because I didn't even like know about knee sleeves at the time. And I like to go beltless a lot. So the squat and deadlift were pretty respectable even before that, but it definitely took things to the next level. I never deny that. I never deny what it does for your physique or strength or anything like that. I never downplay it. I'm very open about it. So it was just a different time in my life, but I was into that for 9 years, and that definitely helped all the lifts.
9 years of steroids. What was like the peak of that like? Because I'm sure it's some like did you feel good on a day to day basis? Like I have obviously never done steroids, and I don't really know many people who have personally, but like, does it make you feel good? Like, do you have a lot of energy? Like, what is this? What does that feel like?
Yeah, it was so commonplace because the world I was in, as far as powerlifting, everybody was doing it. It wasn't a thing that was necessarily taboo at all because you were around all these freakish lifters. Like I was around guys who were way bigger than me, even who were, the Lily Bridges. Like they were monsters. They were huge, and guys like that. So the people I'd go against in competition, everybody was doing it. So it wasn't even out of the ordinary. We were all used to it. It just became our norm. Whereas now, I'm definitely not around it anywhere near as much. I've kind of gotten out of that whole, you know, powerlifting industry, so to speak. I'm kind of pivoting a little bit. But as far as how I felt, I mean, from a health standpoint, you don't necessarily feel the best because you've got the high blood pressure, you've got the sleep apnea all the time.
Mm.
So you could sleep 9 hours a night and you'd still feel not rested at all because your neck size would literally get so big, you'd have so much muscle mass that you would have obstructive sleep apnea. So you're never feeling rested. You've always got the high blood pressure. Your blood work's always super out of whack. So as far as that, you don't feel healthy, but you feel like this, imposing figure everywhere you go, where you command respect in a sense. People look at you like, wow, that guy's huge or whatever. And that part is addicting, no doubt about it. Like that part, as far as feeling superhuman, that's an addicting feeling. Whereas now, like I feel normal. I'm, 205 pounds. So it's like losing 50 pounds and all the muscle mass, a lot of it. And you just feel like normal. Nobody looks at you like that anymore because you just have, you look like you work out. So that it was like a psychological thing more than anything, where it would give you this feeling of power. But I always felt, semi unhealthy. And then if I got like close to a competition where I had a meet coming up and I was really pushing the drugs at that point, I would feel like even more unhealthy, where I could feel really nauseous from the amount, or you would feel off. But you were also your strongest. So like the stronger you'd get, the worse you'd almost feel.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that. I would have imagined like, testosterone's through the roof, everything's all jacked up. Like I feel like you'd have just energy all the time, but it doesn't sound like you would.
No, I think it's a misconception where you'd almost always feel more lethargic because you're in this unhealthy state. There's probably this high degree of inflammation. So something like your C-reactive protein would be through the roof, which is the systemic inflammation biomarker. You would get checked on blood work. That would be through the roof. Your lipids, as far as your like cholesterol and now apolipoprotein B, that'd be something you would check. I know I'm kind of probably going down the rabbit hole of confusing people here, but this stuff would all be out of whack. All the health parameters you would look at, if you were to dive into them and kind of get a snapshot of how your health is, it would be a disaster. So you kind of ignore all that because you're in your 20s, you feel invincible, and you just want to be strong. And nowadays, I've seen a lot of guys in the industry, who have pushed it and ignored things like that. They get to their 30s, and, we're seeing it all the time, every year. Guys in the industry, not just powerlifting, but the fitness industry, are passing away. And this is just every year. Every year there's a couple big names, and we don't even see the people who aren't big names who passed away from this lifestyle. So for me, even now, it just got to a point where I was like, I can't keep living like this. I've seen people die. I've seen people die from this. I'm not going to ignore it. And that's kind of how I got on this other path.
That's scary, man. Is it usually something to do with like a cardiac related thing, like cardiac arrest or something along those lines, or like the high blood pressure? Do you know what it usually is that ends up killing those people?
Yeah, I mean, it's you basically nailed it. It's mainly heart related a lot of times. That's where this stuff messes you up. So there's no doubt about it. I mean, you can get away with a lot in your 20s. And for me, it was anabolic steroids. I didn't partake in alcohol. I've never really drank. I didn't do any recreational drugs ever. Didn't even smoke weed, like nothing like that. But this was my drug of choice, was anabolic steroids. I loved being strong. I loved getting as strong as possible. That was the goal at the time. I was going to do whatever it took to get as strong as possible. Nothing was going to stop me. So you throw caution to the wind, you ignore your health, you don't worry about all that. Because really, in your 20s, I mean, I know you're in your 20s now, but at that point, I felt like I'm not going to die. No, nothing's going to happen to me. And then I actually saw, a few years later, I saw some guys die like in their 20s, and it kind of woke me up. Um, there's so many guys where I've like trained around them or I've interacted with them, whether it's texting online or whatever, and now they're not here. And it's like you can't
Jeez.
keep ignoring that. Back in 2010, there really wasn't much information out there. Like people didn't think this stuff was that detrimental. And now, like we are seeing it year in and year out, where people are having heart attacks or the blood pressure related problems. There's been a lot of aneurysms. Just in the news in the last week was that guy Joe Aesthetics. I forget his name. He had 8 million Instagram followers, like a big bodybuilding scene guy, very shredded, and he passed away from an aneurysm, which it's like it may or may not directly be attributed to that sort of stuff, but he was in the industry. He was in the same kind of stuff. So I mean, Rich Piana, like we could just name after name. There, Mr. Olympia, Sean Roden from like a couple years ago passed away. Jerry Ward, Boston Lloyd. Like I could just keep naming people to where it's like a huge wake up call. It's like I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna keep taking this stuff. I'm not gonna keep going down that road. And it was uh, it was a wild ride, but I think a lot of guys now just get caught up in it and they stay within that role. They stay on that path, and then it's too late. And I don't want to be another statistic.
Damn, dude, that's so sad. And I'm sure so much of it is due, like you kind of mentioned earlier, of like the peer pressure almost of like, or maybe not peer pressure, but like just the normalization of it within the lifting community. Or even like it makes me think of like the Tour de France, like when Lance Armstrong was at his peak. Like, yes, he obviously got caught doping, but like I read something that like if you had to go down the list to like the guy that got like 20th place in the Tour de France to find the first clean guy. And it's just like when everybody's doing it, it's so easy to justify you doing it also. Do you feel like there's going to come a time where like people, like everybody kind of wakes up to the dangers of it, more knowledge about it, and then people just stop using that stuff? Or do you think it'll always kind of be a part of the sport?
Yeah, I think it'll always be a part of the sport because people want to push things to the extreme. They want to get as strong as possible. So they're going to do whatever it takes. I think there's more education nowadays. There's more information out there. Um, as far as there should be a point where you call it quits with that. So I think guys are going to dabble in it, but they might be more responsible in the sense that they'll narrow that window of time that they're doing so, where they'll be like, okay, I'm turning 30 now. I need to chill out on this stuff and not do it anymore. Uh, that's the biggest change where I think people won't push it as long. And that was kind of the case with me where it's like I was turning 29 and I'm like, I got to stop with this. This is not going to be a good decision going into my 30s. And there was a lot more information out at the time. So it will dissuade some people, but at the same time, you're not as receptive to the message when you're, say, 20 years old or 23 years old. You're more likely to push it. And now too, like people want that bigger following, and the way to do that in powerlifting is to be the strongest, like that, get that Instagram following or whatever, put up crazy numbers. So there's more pressure in that from that side to like really take everything and get as strong as possible and grow your following if you're trying to go down that road.
Do they test for that stuff in powerlifting, or is there like similar to bodybuilding where there's like a natural class you can be a part of, or how does that work with powerlifting?
Yeah, powerlifting is the exact same thing where there is the natural side of things, natural. So I honestly I would call it drug tested because a lot of people are slipping through the cracks with the drug testing, and they don't drug test like that many people. But USAPL is what the drug tested side of things is, IPF, and then there's also the untested side. So I was a part of obviously the untested side, which was huge as well. Like there were tons of people competing untested, and you could go to one of these meets And none of us at the time, like nobody looked normal. Like everybody's freaking huge, just massive traps, massive backs. Like it's just, it's crazy now to look back on because I'll even look back at like video or pictures of myself and I'm like, I can't even believe I looked like that because it's so far from how
You
things
were
are now.
huge, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy though because I can't even picture myself being like that person. It just is like it blows my mind. I can't imagine the weights or anything like that. I'm like in a different place in life. Um, but yeah, there's big business in the untested side of things where it's like it's expected that everybody's going to take stuff, and that's just how it is.
Do you have any regrets of doing it? Like obviously you pumped your numbers up so big, like these just incredible lifts that you had. Like if you could go back and do it again, would you not take steroids, or do you think you would do it all over again the same way?
I think I would have. That's a tough question because I can't say that I wouldn't have taken them, but I would have gone about it in a much more responsible manner as far as dosing, when I started, what age, instead of starting at say age 20, wait a couple of years, not do as rough of compounds like trenbolone. Trenbolone's like the steroid that gets all the attention. It's ridiculous. It's where roid rage comes from, aggression, all that sort of stuff. And I probably wouldn't have done that as extensively, obviously. I would have gotten blood work over all those years on cycle to kind of see where things were at. So I can't say that I would have not done it, but I would have done it much more responsibly if that's a thing. I would have done it later in life, a little later, and for a smaller period, a shorter period of time, a smaller window. So there's things I would have done differently, but at the same time, it was a lot of where I'm at today is due to what I was doing when I was on it. Like the numbers I hit, the opportunities I had, getting flown to France a couple times to lift, getting flown all over the US to lift, all the opportunities, the animal cage, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know if it would have been there had I not gone down that road. So there's not necessarily regrets, but I could have done it a lot better, a lot more efficiently, and a lot healthier. So.
When you were doing it, did you have help from like a doctor or physician, or was it just like you buy it from a friend who might have had got a prescription, or how did that work?
Yeah, it's like a whole underground industry. It's all black market for the most part. There's a lot better quality stuff out there now, but back then there's no doctor. I didn't anytime I'd go to a doctor, they'd look at me and I'd get some lecture about how I shouldn't be taking steroids, obviously, because they could just look at me and know what you're doing. And I just didn't want to hear it. I wasn't receptive to that message. I don't want to hear that when I'm trying to push things to an extreme level of strength. So there's no doctor involvement. It's just like people who either know people or they're making it themselves at their house. They're ordering like they order the raw powder from China, the raw powder form, and they'll make it like it's cooked up. It's like a whole cooking process, right? And you get it from somebody like that, black market. And that's how all of it was made underground. And when I got towards the end, I got approached by like big business drug dealers, basically. Like, like, like drug dealers, they only dealt in steroids, but I'm talking like multi-million-dollar operations, big time operations where they would reach out to you like, we'll
Jeez.
sponsor you, we'll hook you up with whatever you want, whenever you want, for free. We just need like word of mouth referral. Like that's how they grow their business. So they would sponsor like the best guys, and it would be the best, highest quality gear, highest quality steroids, and that came later on. It was like instead of getting it just from some guy who you knew where you didn't know the quality of it. And I dealt with crazy stuff like crazy infections, bad shots, where I couldn't walk for like a week. I would be limping around. Um, Terrible acne. It was freaking brutal, dude. Worst acne you've ever seen. That stuff was all from like unclean steroids.
Hmm.
But later on, I was getting like the best stuff because I was in contact with these big time like drug dealers who were like big time, and it was still anonymous, but you knew they were dealing like millions.